What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into, such as Long Beach State. How about the beach? Sweeping Hawaii at Hawaii. Were they able to do it twice in one weekend? Or were those Rainbow Warriors able to get payback after that sweep on Friday? Also, how about Purdue-Fort Wayne taking down Loyola of Chicago? I knew those Mastodons had it in them. Also, how about Damon? Yes, the Wildcats getting their first ever ranked win over an opponent against CSUN of all teams. And those little Trentons from UC San Diego, they took down CSUN as well. Are the Matadors in trouble? They've got Hawaii on the horizon this week. Can the Matadors get together before they host the Rainbow Warriors? And how about TCU taking down USC in beach volleyball? Are the Horned Frogs for real? Or did USC miss a key player? Also, we have a lot of beach volleyball to get into, and we have some NBA news. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 186 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go to the website, you will see a Patreon link at the top, and when you click it, you will see a donation link, which is basically the Patreon link, and once you click it, you will see a Patreon link, and once you click it, the donations will start out at $5 a month once you start donating. This will get you a shout out from all of our shows, including this one, all 27 of our shows, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, and to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities, to all major sports and cities, to all parts of the country. All the while, we've been by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Key to the Gate, Marcus Los Great, a donor that wishes to remain anonymous, and Bay Area Raised Apparel. And with all that said and done, let's get started. So we have to get started with NCAA men's volleyball because there was a lot that happened this past weekend. But before we jump on into the action that happened this weekend, there was a lot that happened before the weekend happened in men's volleyball, as there was an upset that happened on Thursday, and that actually happened all the way that happened in Northridge. And that was actually courtesy of some Big West action. That was courtesy of the hands of UC San Diego. So, a little backstory with UC San Diego. Unfortunately, they have not had the season that we all have been imagining. They haven't had the season like they had last year, but this is probably their biggest win of the season. They upset Northridge at CSUN in the Premier America Credit Union Arena, which is their new name of their arena, as they were able to do so in straight sets. The first set they won 25-21, second set 25-22, and then the third set 25-20. Now, I was actually unaware of this upset. I did not know that this upset occurred until I saw about, yesterday, maybe Saturday. This really caught me off guard, and honestly, I give lots of kudos to UC San Diego. It was very impressive, if you ask me. And UC San Diego only has one really true standout-ish player on their team from last year's team that had so much success with all the players, such as Kyle McCauley, just to name a few. And that player was Ryan Kaw. He was kind of the standout-ish player, as he led the way with 13 kills. Josh Schellinger backed him up with 8 kills, and that was pretty much that when it came to all the other kill leaders, as the next kill leader had 4 kills, and that was 2 other players. As a team, UC San Diego hit 263, and that was pretty much that, as UC San Diego didn't really have the most flashiest stats. They did outdig CSUN 31-24, and they out-aced them 3-1, which isn't ultimately that big, but it's not ultimately big. Mike Pat joins us in the chat room, and I'm just going to address this to Mike. No, Florida State women's volleyball did not win it all yet, and they're not going to win it all for the next 5 months, so please stop asking that. Don't ask for another 5 months, okay? Okay. Unless you're going to ask about it in beach volleyball, okay? Okay. We're talking men's volleyball, okay? Okay. Anyway, back to UC San Diego CSUN. One stat that UC San Diego outdid CSUN in was blocking, as UC San Diego outblocked CSUN 10.5 to 5.5 as a team, as it was quite phenomenal, as, CSUN, I don't know what happened. They had won 10 in a row, or before this match, but I know some of their wins weren't ultimately that great, but they had 2 wins over Stanford. I don't know what happened, but I guess maybe the Big West just really comes in waves. And CSUN didn't really have that bad of a night. Kyle Hobus had 15 kills. He hit 355. Griffin Walters had 10 kills, although he hit only 77. Jano Tello had 7 kills, but that's kind of where the buck stops, I guess. So, anyway, so overall for CSUN, that's kind of where the 10-game winning streak ended. CSUN only hit 211, and again, they missed 18 serves, while UC San Diego only missed 10. Mike Pat also did, but Mike Pat did say that it's the best dang volleyball podcast on the internet. So I will give Mike Pat credit on that one. But back to the UC San Diego win. Yeah, this was probably the biggest UC San Diego win of the season and of Brad Rostratter's coaching tenure, because they hadn't had too many wins, and this was their first Big West Conference win of the season. So good for UC San Diego on getting that win. So it's impressive that they were able to pull out that win on the road. So, and to win on the road is impressive. You don't really get too many of those wins too often like that. So it's quite impressive. But that's not where the upsets ended right there for CSUN. Their upsets didn't end there for CSUN. They were upset on Saturday against Damon. Now, I also forgot this upset as well, just because, I'm going to be honest, I actually was sick this past weekend. My throat was scratchy on Thursday. I thought it was nothing, and then it eventually turned into a cold, and I was pretty much bedridden the entire weekend. If my voice does sound a little nasally or scratchy, I apologize. For those that do listen to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show on Friday, I did not have a show then. I should be back this Friday, but we'll see. But back to CSUN versus Damon. So yes, Damon from the Northeastern Conference. So Damon, they took the first 2 sets in their West Coast road trip. They actually played 3 West Coast opponents. They played Concordia Irvine and Pepperdine as well as CSUN, and they lost the previous two matchups in straight sets. And then they took on CSUN. They won the first two sets, 25-19 and 25-21. Damon hit 476 in the first set while holding CSUN to 192. Then in the second set, CSUN hit 121 while Damon hit 297. Then in set 3, CSUN kind of turned it around. They hit 481. They took the third set 25-19. They held Damon to only 194 or 154. And then in set 4, CSUN hit 560. They took the fourth set 25-22. They held Damon to 261, which wasn't bad. Then in the fifth set, it was quite tight, but in the end, Damon was eventually broke through and took that fifth set 15-12. They hit 333, and they only had 2 hitting errors on 9 kills on 21 swings. Zach Schneider led the way with 26 kills, and he hit 488, which was quite impressive. Cameron Milligan had 14 kills. Kyle Zelasco had 9 kills, and he also had 12 digs, and he also chipped in 6 assists. So he was flirting with a triple-double. Sean Califf had 8 digs to go along with his 45 assists. As a team, Damon hit 297, which was not bad. CSUN hit 311, or I guess I should say the full name of Cal State Northridge, or Cal State Northridge. Northridge was led by Griffin Walters, who had 20 kills. Kyle Hobus had 17 kills. Lorenzo Bertozzi had 12 kills. Jan Otello had 8 kills. So, and I guess I should mention that Kyle Hobus had 11 digs to go, and Walters had 9 digs as well. Donovan Constable had 55 assists to go along with his 3 kills and 7 digs. So overall for Damon, this was huge just because this was their first ever ranked win. And Damon's been only around for 5 seasons. So for them to get their first ever win over a ranked opponent is quite impressive. So bravo to Damon. I did give them the Set Point NCAA Men's Volleyball Team of the Week, which is an honor I have been giving out since I've been giving out for the NCAA Women's Volleyball side of things. So good job to Damon. It's an impressive win on their behalf, and I think they are really, really impressive. Mike Pat says, volleyball has some great last names. Last names? Well, honestly, they're... I won't say... I'm not going to really comment on that, just because certain players come from certain places from the earth. Like, come on. Anyway, so the next upset we had comes from the MIVA. So we had Ball State versus Ohio State. So this was actually round 2 of Ball State versus Ohio State. So round 1 actually came on Wednesday, where Ohio State actually got swept by Ball State at Ball State. So the first meeting, Ball State swept them 26-24, 25-15, and 25-20. So it was kind of not surprising, but Ball State is pretty good, but I just think they were underperforming as of late. This time around, I think Ohio State really needs to have this big-time win, just because they need to keep pace with Loyola, even though I don't think anybody's going to keep up with Loyola. So the first set, Ball State narrowly took the first set, even though there were only 4 ties and 1 lead change. They won it 25-23, despite Ohio State hitting 312 and Ball State hitting 360, but both teams really came to play. So there's that. Then set 2, Ball State narrowly took that set 26-24, and once again, lower numbers as Ball State hit 273 and Ball State hit 250. So before I continue, Mike Pat elaborates on his comment. He says, it's just for fun. You don't want a bunch of guys named Smith and Johnson. Yeah, I guess you're right, but still. Yeah. Okay, so I guess he does say he means that in a meaningful way. So I guess he was meaning that in a meaningful way. I didn't know if he was meaning that in in a sarcastic way or a true meaningful way, but he was meaning that in the meaningful way. So when he said great last name. So yeah. So back to the Ball State-Ohio State match. So Ball State was up 2-0, and I'm just thinking, okay, well, it looks like Ball State's going to sweep this one, and Ohio State is going to be further back of Ball State and Loyola. Right? Wrong. Ohio State actually asserted themselves in the third set as they won at 25-18. They never trailed, and there were no ties, as they had a blistering 435 while holding Ball State to only 190. Then in set 4, there were 16 ties and 3 lead changes, but ultimately it looked as if Ohio State was going to comfortably take that fourth set, as it looked like they created some separation late in the set, but then Ball State tied it up at 24 apiece, but then 2 straight points from Ohio State gave them the set at 26-24, and just like that, they're going cinco sets, as I was thinking, are they going to go cinco sets? Because every time I say they're going cinco, or every time I'm thinking they're going to go cinco sets, I always jinx it. But this time, Ohio State forced a fifth set. They held Ball State to only 163 in that fourth set. They hit 368. And then in the fifth set, excuse me a second. Sorry about that. So in the fifth set, Ohio State hit 444, held Ball State to 231, and they eventually took the fifth set 15-12. It got a little dicey toward the end. There were 9 ties, but in the end, Ohio State was able to grind it out and eventually squeeze out the win. And it was their biggest win of the season, and it's huge just because it keeps them right behind. It keeps them right behind Lindenwood, and it keeps them in good pace for possibly getting in second place, because I honestly think that you don't want to see Loyola in the semifinals, and honestly, you don't want to see Ball State in the semifinals, but it's either pick your poison. So we'll see what happens when it comes to who you don't want to see and who you want to see in the MIVA conference finals or semifinals, but I think for seeding purposes, you don't want to see Loyola, just because Loyola has been good as of late. More on that later. But as for the second match, Ohio State was led by Shane Wetzel. Yes, Shane Wetzel. He was quite the hero, as he led the way with 19 kills. Jacob Pasteur had 18 kills. Jack Stevens had 12 kills. Justin Howard had 9 kills. Ohio State hit 361, as they hit 300 in all but one set, which was the second set, as they also had 8 blocks to Ball State's 7.5, and both teams had 37 digs, and despite missing 27 serves, Ohio State won that one. It was quite impressive, if you ask me. Meanwhile, Ball State was led by Caleb Jennis, who had 16 kills. Tanashi N. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this last name. I'm sorry. He had 14 kills. Dyer Ball had 9 kills. Ball State hit 230, which obviously wasn't their best game. They kind of cooled off after that first set. So Ball State still has some kinks to work out. They do have a chance to bounce back, as they've got Lindenwood, or Quincy and Lindenwood, this weekend. Ohio State has Lindenwood and Quincy this weekend, so they have some chance to make up some ground. I'll talk a little bit more about Lindenwood later on, but for right now, Ohio State really needed that win, because if not, then Ball State would have gotten closer to getting that number 2 seed. But keep an eye out for Lindenwood. Honestly, Lindenwood is occupying that number 2 seed in the MIVA. Speaking of MIVA, we had another upset in the MIVA on Saturday, as we had Purdue-Fort Wayne upsetting Loyola of Chicago. So the first 2 sets actually went to Purdue-Fort Wayne. So backstory time here. So remember what I said last week, or a couple weeks ago, when I said that Purdue-Fort Wayne was kind of the odd man out when it came to partaking in the Outrigger Invitational? Well, let me tell you something. Purdue-Fort Wayne partaking in the Outrigger Invitational really benefited them, just because while they were unranked, they were playing the number 1, number 2, and number 3 ranked team. But you also got to remember that after that Outrigger Invitational, they had Charleston, and then they also had Loyola of Chicago. Those were some good tests. Before they played Loyola of Chicago, those are 4 good tests for Purdue-Fort Wayne. Now, they lost all 4 of those matches. In straight sets, mind you. So, unfortunately for Purdue-Fort Wayne, they wound up losing all those matches, and it is unfortunate. But this time around, they took what they learned in those losses, and they added them all up to the 5-set loss in the loss to Loyola of Chicago the previous time around, and they put it together in this win over Loyola of Chicago this time around. So, anyway, Purdue-Fort Wayne took the first 2 sets. First set, Purdue-Fort Wayne came out ready to go. They hit 393 in the first set. They held Loyola of Chicago to only 107. Won the first set 25-18. Second set, they won at 27-25. They hit 250 as they kind of cooled off while Loyola picked up some steam. They hit 300. Then the third set, Loyola narrowly won that third set 25-23. They hit 360 while Purdue-Fort Wayne hit 208. Then in set 4, Loyola won at 25-20. They hit 273 while PFW hit negative 33. So PFW kind of cooled off after that blistering first set. But then in the 5th set, it was just back and forth. It was a back and forth battle. And then ultimately, PFW was able to break through. Their blocking came alive. And eventually, they were able to hand Loyola their first MIVA loss of the season, winning the 5th set 15-12. They hit 312 in the 5th set while holding Loyola to negative 59 in that 5th set. So it is quite impressive that Purdue-Fort Wayne finally broke through, got their first ranked win of the season, and they were able to hand Loyola their first MIVA loss. So good job to those Mastodons. PFW was led by John Didrich, who had 19 kills. Also have to give a shout out to John Didrich, who registered his 1,000th kill, which is quite impressive. While he did have 12 errors, he kind of needed to play the hero just because he needed to be at his best. Otherwise, PFW was not going to emerge victorious. Bryce Walker did add 14 kills for PFW. Carlos Mercado added 9 kills as well. Purdue-Fort Wayne hit 216, but they had 16 blocks, which was just enough against Loyola's 14.5 blocks. Loyola missed 22 serves and only had 3 aces, while PFW had 7 aces to their 20 missed serves. Loyola was led by Cole Schlotthauer and Parker Van Buren, who each had 19 kills, but that's kind of where the buck stops because their next kill leaders were Nico Demis Meyer and Jimmy Meinhardt, who each had 6 kills. Loyola as a team hit 220, and like I said, that's kind of where the buck stops, as Loyola did actually outdig Purdue-Fort Wayne 48-38, as Matt Oakley led the way in that category with 16 digs. Van Buren had 11 digs. Sergio Carrillo led the dig department for PFW with 11 digs. So, overall for Purdue-Fort Wayne, it was just an impressive victory for them. They needed that big-time victory because that's going to really boost their confidence. Now, for Purdue-Fort Wayne, I'm just going to also say this. They're at best a dark horse team. I don't really think they're going to win the regular season conference, but they can make noise. Look at what they did last year. They made it all the way to the MIVA conference tournament finals, and they gave Ball State all that they could handle. But for Purdue-Fort Wayne, this is a team that no one might not want to play. They're sneaky good, and them being battle-tested last week and this week, and eventually coming out victorious against Loyola of Chicago is really going to test them and push them forward a long way. All right, now we got to get into the big one from last week. We gotta get into Long Beach State versus Hawaii. First, we gotta get into round one. So round one, Long Beach State really came into play. Long Beach State took the opening set 25-20. I was very surprised on how well Long Beach State played in that opening set. First and foremost, the attendance in the match was 7,527. I'm like, whoa, Nelly, dude. No, first of all, it wasn't as much as the UCLA-Hawaii match, just because, well, that had over 10,300 to be exact. But for Hawaii, Long Beach State, it's always going to draw a big crowd. But back to the match, Long Beach State really came to play. Then in the second set, it was just quite astounding. And then late in the set, I'm just going to fast forward to late in the set, Long Beach State dodged 4 set points. Now, I did also see that there was a challenge from, I think it was Alan Knipe, that was basically a touch that might not have had enough evidence, but it was ruled a touch, and then Long Beach State got the point, and then Hawaii fans, they have the right to be outraged, but you have to remember that these referees are doing the best that they can when it comes to big-time matches, and eventually Long Beach State did take that second set 29-27, and then the third set, Long Beach State jumped out to an early lead. They led 15-9. Eventually, Hawaii did cut the lead down to as little as 2, but then Long Beach State reestablished themselves, and then they eventually took the third set 25-22, and that was the match. It was very impressive. Long Beach State hit a blistering 484. Sotiris Shipanis led the way with 19 kills. I was just very impressed. I unfortunately could not watch this just because I was just in bed sick, and I just kind of needed my rest. Spencer Olivier, Spencer Olivier also had 13 kills. He only had 1 hitting error. Shipanis also had 2 hitting errors, which is darn right impressive. Also got to make note of those middle blockers for Long Beach State. Shane Holdaway and Simon Torwey combined for 15 kills. No hitting errors. Just downright impressive. When those middles are on, they are just on. And overall, it was just a strong night for Long Beach State. And to sweep Hawaii at Hawaii is just impressive overall. So you really have to like the effort and energy that Long Beach State brought. And the last time Hawaii was swept at Hawaii was 2020 before everything was canceled, when BYU swept them. So, well, canceled before everything was canceled due to COVID-19, but it was just an impressive night for Long Beach State, but everything was not clicking for Hawaii, as Dimitrios Mouchilas led the way for the Rainbow Warriors with 15 kills. Jazz Galloway had 10 kills. Guilherme Voss and Spiros Chakas each had 7 kills. Hawaii hit 303, which wasn't bad, but in that third set, they only hit 57. Here's how impressive Long Beach State was. Despite Hawaii hitting 516, Long Beach State hit 568. They hit over 500 in the first 2 sets, which is impressive overall. So I just think that, and they only held Hawaii to 3.5 blocks as a team. They won the blocking game overall. So I just think it was just impressive, just a downright impressive game plan overall for Long Beach State. But the second match was a different story. So this time, Long Beach State was on the other side of the shoe the bottom end of the shoe, as Hawaii was the one that jumped out to the fast start, as Hawaii basically just ran away with the first set, 25-16. And the second set, it was rather tight. I'm just going to fast forward to pretty much the end. Hawaii led 24-20, then Long Beach State just chipped away. It looked like they tied it up at 24 apiece, but you have to give credit to the assistant coach, Milan Zarkovic. If I mispronounced that, I apologize, but Milan, the the assistant coach, he spurred Charlie Wade to challenge the call of a net violation, and indeed it was a net violation. Now, looking at it, Long Beach State fans do have some argument to this. You can make the argument that the ball might have touched the net, but it also looks like that Sotiris Shipanis did also touch the net. Like, it is so close that you just need to frame by frame that, but it's just so close. But eventually, that point that Long Beach State earned turned into the Hawaii point, and Hawaii took that second set 25-23. So Milan Zarkovic knows best, as well as Charlie Wade. So coaching staff knows best. Then in the third set, it was 23-23, but then Hawaii won the last 2 points. They won it off a walk-off block, though it kind of looked like, I don't know if it was a block. I feel Clark Godbold hit it into the net, but I'm just going to call a block a block. I'll just call it a walk-off block, just because everyone just called it a walk-off block. And the 9,579 fans that were Hawaii fans, for the most part, erupted with glee as Hawaii earned its revenge. They swept Long Beach State. It was a revenge sweep, not a reverse sweep, a revenge sweep. As Hawaii was led by Chaz Galloway, who had 11 kills. He hit .429. Spiros Chakas, I don't know if that's how his last name's pronounced. I think it's pronounced Hakas. But either way, Spiros Chakas, he had 10 kills. Hawaii hit .385, which is a lot more efficient than the previous night. And they did a whole lot more better job than the previous night. They outblocked Long Beach State 11-2 as a team. Both teams had 5 service aces, though Hawaii missed 5 serves fewer. Long Beach State was led by Spencer Olivier, who had 14 kills. Clark Godbold had 11 kills. Sotiris Shipanis had 9 kills, but he had 7 hitting errors, and he only hit 67, which is a big fat NO. Now, the middle blockers weren't as efficient for Long Beach State as the previous night, as they only combined for 6 kills, and they had 1 hitting error. But Shane Holdaway only had 1 kill. But that's probably because Long Beach State was under the serving pressure from Hawaii all match long, and when you're under so much serving pressure, you can't really get to that middle all that much. So I kind of understand for Long Beach State why they couldn't really get to Simon or Shane, but it's just how it is. You kind of have to adapt to that play style or serving style from Hawaii. And one thing that Chaz Galloway mentioned on the post-game interview with Tiff from ESPN Hawaii is that they kept the ball away from Mason Briggs. Mason Briggs, the libero, is a dynamite libero. He only had 4 digs. Compared to the previous match, Mason Briggs had 3 digs. But either way, he said to keep the ball away from Mason Briggs because he can dig the ball quite well. So for Mason Briggs, he is a fantastic libero, but Hawaii did a great job of keeping the ball away from Mason Briggs. So I think for Hawaii, they came with a better game plan. I think for Hawaii, maybe they might have had a bigger head from last week after that win over UCLA, and then maybe they learned more from the loss against Long Beach State, more so than the win from UCLA. I don't know, but regardless, Long Beach State and Hawaii split their matchups. So after all that, UC Irvine is the lone team that stands atop the Big West Conference standings. Speaking of UC Irvine, we have to talk a little about them just because they actually survived a little scare on Thursday against UC Santa Barbara. So they went up to UC Santa Barbara. They fell behind 2-0 in the match, but then they reverse swept UC Santa Barbara. It just goes to show that the Big West Conference is really good. I think the Big West Conference is going to be a roller coaster this year. I think it's not just going to be Long Beach State or Hawaii. I think we're going to get scares and thrills all over the place. I think CSUN is going to bring it. I think UC Irvine's going to bring it. Santa Barbara, They've got some studs on their team. Heck, UC San Diego, they have a couple of good studs on their team. I know people are probably going to say, you're probably crazy. Hawaii's probably going to regroup after that one blip from Long Beach State. Yes, you're probably right, but UC Irvine, they're looking good. They're looking really good. But I think all over the place, all across the board, the Big West is really stacked. There's some sort of talent in the Big West in terms of every team. So you can't sleep on any team in the Big West Conference. I mean, look at what happened with Long Beach State against Irvine last year at the Bren. Went up 2-0, got reverse swept. They went to UC San Diego last year. They eventually got reverse swept. Or not reverse swept. They lost in 5. So you can't sleep on anybody in the Big West Conference. And they also went 5 with CSUN last year at the Pyramid. So you just cannot sleep on anybody. And they also went 5 with UC Santa Barbara. And like I said in my little video preview, they have to do a better job of playing against some of these Big West Conference opponents. Just because in the Big West Conference, every match is so precious. And now that Hawaii and Long Beach State swept one another, it now goes to points. And Hawaii scored more points than Long Beach State did. So Hawaii has that tiebreaker in terms of points scored overall. So it's an advantage for Hawaii. So they control their own destiny. So unless Hawaii loses along the way, Long Beach State pretty much has to be perfect going forward in Big West Conference play. Unfortunately for Long Beach State, they don't have any more conference games this week. They've got 2 matches against USC, while Hawaii has 2 matches at CSUN. So we'll get to that in a little bit later. But as for UC Irvine, they're the only team undefeated in Big West Conference play. They beat UC Santa Barbara twice. The second match against UC Santa Barbara at the Bren Event Center was just a sweep. Basically, they didn't have too much trouble. They had a little bit of trouble, but they started picking up their gameplay. Francesco Sani just continues to be a service ace machine. He set the single season service ace record. Let's try saying that 5 times fast. He set the single season service ace record for UC Irvine men's volleyball in the win over UC Santa Barbara the second go-around. And he's just a phenomenal player. Joe Carlos is setting the offense to greater heights. So overall, for UC Irvine, you also got to remember, they're hosting the Big West Conference tournament this season. So UC Irvine, if you're an Anteater fan, you got a lot to be excited about. But now they're starting to get into the big meat and potatoes of their conference. They're on bye this week, but now after their bye, they're going to be playing the big boys of their conference. They've got Hawaii after the bye, then they've got CSUN, and then that last week is against Long Beach State. It's going to be a big week for Hawaii, as now the schedule is really going to pick up for those Anteaters. And honestly, this is where their big-time, tough schedule comes into play. And can UC Irvine steal a win from those Anteaters? Can they steal a win from Long Beach State? If that is the case, then they could possibly win that Big West Conference regular season championship and be the 1 seed. And it might not even come down to that. It could come down to them being an at-large. Time will tell. So other matches that happened this past week in Week 11, UCLA swept Stanford twice. So the first match, UCLA just dominated Stanford. I'm not even joking with this first match scores. 25-12, 25-12, 25-12. Yeah, UCLA stomped Stanford into the ground. At Stanford. So, long story short, Stanford and UCLA had to play in the smaller gym. I think it was the Burnham Pavilion and not the Maples Pavilion, just because that was actually being hosted by the women's basketball team, just because of NCAA women's basketball and the women's basketball tournament. Speaking of NCAA basketball, Davidson Crooks, the host of the one half of the Fast Break pops in the chat room. He says, what's good? Just talking some NCAA men's volleyball. So, UCLA just dominated Stanford on the first night on Friday. Then the second night, Stanford made it a little bit more respectable, but UCLA just swept them 25-18, 25-21, 25-20. It's safe to say that UCLA is the class of the MPSF. They are off this week because of finals, but next week they've got GCU. That's going to be for next week. Like I said, Wednesday, Ball State swept Ohio State. Then on Thursday, we had Loyola beating Charleston in 4 sets, 25-14, 16-25, 25-21, and 25-16. Then on Friday, we had Charleston sweeping Purdue Fort Wayne 30-28, 25-21, and 25-23. So that is pretty much all of the notable NCAA men's volleyball matches. And then, like I said, we had those UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara men's volleyball matches, which was won by UC Irvine, and it was an impressive win for the Anteaters, especially that reverse sweep on Thursday. Tough loss for the Gauchos. It would have been a huge win beating the Anteaters, but unfortunately for UC Irvine, they are picking up their gameplay, and they know that the Big West Conference is basically go big or go home, hence the title name being Go Big West or Go Home. So, what can you do? But Rick McLaughlin, I think, pretty much said it best last week that I think maybe Irvine might have a slight edge in terms of, like, serving talent and maybe a little offense, but we'll have to see going forward. Like I said, Irvine's off this week, but Long Beach State still has a match this week, and then we still have Hawaii and CSUN playing one another, and then I want to say I think UC San Diego is off this week. Like, I think this is kind of the bye week for everybody except for CSUN and UC for Hawaii. So that's pretty much that for all things NCAA men's volleyball for week 11. So let's get on into the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll for this week. So we actually have a new number one. Yes, spoiler alert, a new number one. So we'll start off from 15 through 11. So 15 through 11 consists of Ohio State at 15, CSUN at 14, Charleston at 13, Ball State at 12, and USC at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Stanford at 10, Loyola of Chicago at 9, BYU at 8, Pepperdine at 7, and UC Irvine at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Grand Canyon at 5, Long Beach State at 4, UCLA at 3, Hawaii at 2, and your new number one team in the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll before my voice gives out is one more time. Penn State. Yes, Penn State is now your new number one team in the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll. I can't believe it. Those Nittany Lions broke through and are the new number one team in the AVCA coaches poll, which is fantabulistic. It's the first time they've been number one since 2009, so hats off to those Nittany Lions, and honestly, good for them. Remember, they do have the win over Hawaii, and even though they lost to Long Beach State and UCLA, they lost to UCLA, but they did beat them earlier in the season, so I think for the Nittany Lions, they are deserving of it, so we'll see what happens. They do play Ohio State this week, and then I want to say they also play Harvard as well, so we'll see what happens with Penn State going forward, and we'll see if they can continue their winning ways, and we'll see if they can continue to be number one. I imagine they should still be number one by the time next week rolls around, but you never know. And they are playing at Harvard this week, so they're home versus Ohio State on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, as of this recording, this is being recorded on Monday. And then they are at Harvard on Friday and on Saturday. So there's that. As for Hawaii, they will look to try to get back to number 1 status as they dropped a spot. UCLA is off. Long Beach State has USC. And then GCU, I imagine, is off this week. If not, GCU is playing Concordia. So unless GCU has the very rare off night, GCU should be able to pull off a win in the desert. But they can't underestimate Concordia. That could be a very easy trap game for them just because Concordia is so easy to overlook just because, well, they're always kind of the low man on the totem pole when it comes to the MPSF. But you just can't underestimate them. You just can't. And next week GCU's got UCLA, so you just can't underestimate them. You just can't. But more on the NCAA men's volleyball matches later. We'll take ourselves a quick break just to give my voice a little bit of a break. When we come back, we will be discussing Week 12 of the NCAA men's volleyball season, and we've got some beach volleyball to discuss. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing. and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Show That Never Sleeps with Pierre Moss, Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, and Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. Normally, Adam Karnick would be wrapping up, as he normally goes live at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, but he is actually on paternity leave, and I would actually like to congratulate Adam Karnick and his wife in advance, as Adam Karnick's wife is about to give birth to a baby boy. They haven't given birth, or Adam's wife has not given birth just yet, but she will eventually Adam's wife will eventually give birth to the baby soon. It's only a matter of time. So, congratulations in advance, Adam, and I wish for nothing but the best for you and your wife, and well wishes to you and your wife going forward, and I wish you all the best, and here's hoping everything goes according to plan. Just praying for you both. Alright, so let's get on into segment number 2 of Set Point. So, let's get on into Week 12 of the NCAA men's volleyball season. So we don't have a whole lot of matches to preview, as well, it looks like we have a whole lot of teams on bye this week. However, we have some notable matches to go over. So we'll start off on Tuesday with number 15 Ohio State at number 1 Penn State. So this is the battle of two Big Ten teams. Yes, as Mark Pavlik said in our little interview, these are two Big Ten teams. I do not care, and he does not care if they are not labeled as Big Ten teams. They should be Big Ten teams, and they are Big Ten teams regardless of whether they are Big Ten teams in their respective conference or not. Like, they are Big Ten teams, and they should be treated as such, just like the other Big Ten teams in men's basketball, women's volleyball, the list goes on and on. So, the first time these two teams met was all the way back in January when Penn State won in 4 sets at the Covalli Center. This is going to be played at the Rec Hall, and we're going to see the first number 1 team, the look of the number 1 ranked Nittany Lions. We'll see if Ohio State can build off of its impressive victory over Ball State. This is kind of a big week for Ohio State, as they've got 2 MIVA matchups against Quincy and Lindenwood. The Lindenwood matchup is big just because they lost to Lindenwood earlier in the season, so we'll have to see what happens with that. But for Ohio State, this is kind of a warm-up matchup for their MIVA matches later in the week. But for Penn State, this is kind of their little round 2 of their Big Ten matchup. And honestly, I hope this is being played on Big Ten Network, because if not, I'm going to be angry. It should be played on Big Ten Network. Anything less of that, I'm going to scream. Except not really, because that's going to damage my voice, and my voice is still not doing good. Again, I apologize if my voice just is not as up to snuff as it was last week. I'm still not 100%, so if you hear any pauses in between, that's because I'm probably not 100%, and I'm probably coughing, so there's that. Anyway, moving on to Friday and Saturday, we've got number 2 Hawaii at number 14 CSUN. So Hawaii is riding high following their 3-set win over Long Beach State, as they head on over to the continent to take on CSUN, who is now riding a 2-game losing streak following a 5-set loss to Damon. So for CSUN, they got to get their you-know-what together. They do have the luxury of playing in Northridge for both matchups, but they're playing a Hawaii team who I think they're well known. They know better. They now know better to play in California because they played Stanford at Stanford and they were able to breeze by the Cardinal quite nicely. So I don't think Stanford or Hawaii is going to have too much trouble against CSUN. CSUN is going to need to get some big games from Kyle Hobis and from Griffin Walters and some of their other hitters. So for Hawaii, they're really the only team that could stop Hawaii is Hawaii. I know that sounds cliche, but I really think that CSUN, if they play like they did against UC San Diego or Damon, then honestly, Hawaii should not have too much problems. Like the only way Hawaii doesn't win this matchup is if Hawaii makes uncharacteristic mistakes. So, for me, I think Hawaii should win this one on paper, but they just can't underestimate CSUN. Like, CSUN is just... They're having a great season, that's for sure. They've definitely improved themselves, and they definitely have improved. They've definitely improved, and they definitely deserve credit. Their new head coach definitely deserves probably some sort of Coach of the Year recognition, and for him, I forget his last name, but it's Theo something. It's Theo Edwards. Theo Edwards. That's his name. Theo Edwards. He definitely deserves a lot of credit for how far he's taken the program and how he's turned it around. And I want to say he was like an assistant coach prior. Either way, Theo Edwards deserves a lot of credit. But it's going to be an uphill climb against Hawaii. But if CSUN does beat Hawaii, I consider him for Coach of the Year. But it's going to take a lot to beat this team. It's going to take a lot to beat Hawaii. And Hawaii knows that every win is precious, and they control their own destiny. Excuse me a second. Sorry about that. I can't wait to be 100%. Anyway, moving on from Hawaii CSUN, we have on Friday, number 11 USC heading down to Long Beach to take on number 4 Long Beach State. The two will also be playing one another on Saturday, as Long Beach State will be going down to Los Angeles to take on number 11 USC at the Galen Center. So, for USC, they just came back from bye week, while Long Beach State is coming back from Hawaii following a 3-set loss, though they split their matchup against Hawaii, which is actually a win if you ask me. Like, it would have been a big loss and a big momentum buster if they had lost both matchups, but the fact that they won at least one via a sweep, that's a big win if you ask me. Now, if they had won a set off the second matchup, that would have been a big... They would have been riding high just a little bit more, but now it's all about them reestablishing momentum following the loss from Hawaii in the second matchup. And Alan Knipe and Jeff Nygaard have been scheduling this matchup midway through Big West Conference play and MPSF play. So, for Jeff Nygaard and USC, this is going to be an uphill climb. It's cliche, but I think for USC, it's going to be it's going to be a challenge, yes, but they have potential. They've got Kevin Coburn, they've got Dylan Klein, and they've got some other good potential players. And I forget the other guy's name. It's not Hobis, but it's like it's Simon something. It's Simon Gallus. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on his name. Simon Gallus Kevin Coburn, and Dylan Klein. That's kind of their three-headed monster. Well, Long Beach State has their three-headed monster in Spencer Olivier, Sotiris Shapanis, and Clark Godbold. And then they've got the two middles as well. Long Beach State is going to have to serve really tough against USC, but USC also serves tough as well. So for USC, they're going to have to really serve just as tough, and they're going to have to pass well as well. And again, look for USC to try to take away Long Beach State's middles, because if they can take away those middles, then USC might have a chance. But for Long Beach State, I think this should be a matchup where they just reestablish their momentum, just because next week they've got UC San Diego, and that's kind of the matchup that truly matters. But this is kind of the matchup where they have to reestablish their momentum, and it's just kind of them getting their California legs back after they were in Hawaii. And then the last matchup to go over is my match/series of the week. Number 7 Pepperdine at number 8 BYU. Yeah, this is kind of a quiet week, honestly. But yeah, MPSF action returns as Pepperdine plays at BYU. This is kind of a no-brainer. Pepperdine, BYU. Normally this would be a West Coast Conference matchup, but we don't have a West Coast Conference in NCAA men's volleyball. Why? Because there is no NCAA men's volleyball there is no West Coast Conference in NCAA men's volleyball. But for BYU and Pepperdine, Pepperdine is in third place in the MPSF, and they're doing all that they can to keep pace with Grand Canyon and UCLA. In order for them to basically have any sort of chance to win the regular season championship, they're going to need to pretty much run the table, which it's kind of tough for them to do just because their last two matchups are against UCLA. I mean, it's doable for Pepperdine. They can do it, but for them to do so, they got to get past BYU, and it's so tough to win at Smith Fieldhouse, and BYU is actually having a good season. So for BYU, for them, in order to win, they got to slow down Jalen Jasper to the best of their ability. And they also got to watch out for Akhenaken Wumi. If they can watch out for him, then they may have a chance. But I would not hold my breath on that one. I mean, it's so tough to slow down Jalen Jasper. Jalen Jasper is him. He is legitimate amazing. And Akhenaken Wumi is just flat out outstanding. He is just the bread to the butter. So overall, for Pepperdine, I feel that this could be winnable, but it's going to be so much more tougher than it appears to be. This is why this is the matchup of the week. This could go either way. I really think BYU could win this matchup, but you have Jalen Jasper, the human cannon, that could really just blow by the BYU defense. And BYU is just having an outstanding season. Everyone thought BYU was going to be second to last in the conference, but they have really overachieved in this conference. No one predicted them to being in the middle of the pack. Everyone thought that Stanford was going to be in the middle of the pack, or Pepperdine or Grand Canyon was going to be in the middle of the pack. That's another team that I think has kind of overexceeded expectations. Grand Canyon is in second place, but that's another matchup for another time. But for BYU Pepperdine, I really think that this is going to be a great matchup. It's a top 10 matchup, so you can't go wrong with that, and it's kind of the best matchup we've got of the bunch. An under-the-radar matchup, or under-the-radar matchups to watch out for, are Lindenwood at Ohio State on Friday, and Lindenwood at Ball State on Saturday. Now, for Lindenwood, they are in second place in the MIVA. However, it's Lindenwood I wouldn't say they haven't really proven themselves, but it's like their body of work hasn't really ultimately shown it. Yes, they've played some tough opponents, and yes, they are in second place. They only have 2 losses, but they haven't really had the biggest of wins. Yes, Lindenwood is a good team, and they are receiving votes in the AVCA conference, or not the AVCA conference, the AVCA coaches polls, but it's like they haven't really beaten anyone great as of late. They've won 4 in a row, yes, and they almost could have won 7 in a row. I think 7 in a row, if not 8 in a row, but honestly, they haven't really had the big-time wins that scream Lindenwood is going to be a legit threat to the MIVA. Like, they are one set away from... They are a reverse sweep away from having won 7 in a row. Let's just put it at that. But unfortunately, Ball State had different plans. But that being said, that's why Lindenwood is my under-the-radar... The matchups between Ball State and Ohio State for Lindenwood are my under-the-radar matches to watch for. And I think Lindenwood, between them and Ball State and Ohio State, aren't going to be an easy out. My only qualm is for Lindenwood is they have to go on the road. Now, Lindenwood, I'll say this for them, going on the road is going to be very tough. It's so tough to beat Ball State at Ball State, and it's so tough to beat Ohio State at Ohio State. Ball State could not beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and vice versa. Do I think it's possible for Lindenwood to win? Yes, but I just, it's possible, but do I see it happening? I don't know. I mean, Lindenwood beat Ohio State the first go-around, but they narrowly won it. And then the first time around against Ball State, they had Ball State. They had them all in the palm of their hands in the first matchup. And then Ball State just basically flew away. Which is unfortunate for Lindenwood because that would have been such a great win for them. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and they wound up losing. But fortunately for Lindenwood, they have another chance against Ohio State and Ball State. For Lindenwood, I definitely could see them finishing in the top 4, which my thing is for Lindenwood, as long as they avoid Loyola, if they finish 2nd or 3rd, and they avoid Loyola in the, the MIVA semifinals, they're in good shape. But if they reach the semifinals and they face Loyola, it's probably not going to end well for those Lions. So that's kind of the goal for Lindenwood. They probably should avoid Loyola at all costs when it comes to the MIVA semifinals. If they do, then they are doing good. But if not, then I don't know what to say. But that being said, I think Lindenwood does have a good shot against... I don't mean to say this in a negative way. I kind of think they match up well against Ohio State. I'm not trying to say Ohio State's going to lose. I just think Lindenwood might have a better shot against Ohio State just because Ohio State... I know they were able to figure it out against Ball State, but they do better at Covolley Center. Let's just keep it real. They play better at Covolley Center than they do on the road. I'm just saying, y'all. Alright, so that's that for the matchups to watch for in week number 12. And that's that for all of the NCAA men's volleyball matches to watch for. Now let's jump on over to some NCAA beach volleyball. So, I was talking about how LMU beach volleyball deserves their respect, and they finally got it. So, for week 3's beach volleyball rankings, let's go over that one just because this was released on Tuesday, and Set Point normally comes out on Mondays. So, the top 20 was released on Tuesday, and 20 through 16 consists of South Carolina at 20, Tulane at 19, Pepperdine at 18, Arizona at 17, and Stetson at 16. 15 through 11 consists of FAU at 15, FIU at 14, Long Beach State at 13, Washington at 12, and Cal at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Georgia State at 10, Hawaii at 9, Stanford at 8, GCU at 7, and LSU at 6. 5 through 1 consist of LMU at 5, told you they'd be in the top 5, Florida State at 4, UCLA at 3, USC at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA Beach Volleyball Coaches Poll is TCU. So not much really changed for TCU. And this week, TCU on, what was it, Friday? Yeah, Friday, they dominated USC. They kind of laid down the wood, and they beat them 4-1. Now, the problem with USC was they didn't have Megan Kraft, which I'll be getting into a little bit, but I just don't think USC is deep enough to take down TCU. I think TCU this might be the year for those Horned Frogs. Unfortunately for USC, I think the magic just ran out, and they had won 46 straight matches before losing to TCU, which is phenomenal. I'll give them that. But unfortunately, the magic just ran out for those little gutty Trojans. But it just is phenomenal. So they just got to start a new streak. That's all that needs to be said. Now again, it did not help that Megan Kraft was not there, so Delaney Maple had to be partnered with someone else. I think it was Gabby Walker that she was partnered up with, but I don't think that was what truly mattered. But again, USC is back to the drawing board, so there's that. If there's any consolation for USC, they were not the only undefeated team that lost. LMU also lost, so they lost to South Carolina of all teams. My goodness. They lost to the other USC. Ugh. Number 19 South Carolina took down number 5 LMU. Or, I'm sorry, number 20 South Carolina took down number 5 LMU. My goodness. That's kind of surprising if you ask me. So, that was their first loss. So, by virtue of every team in their record, TCU is the only undefeated team remaining. So, in NCAA Beach Volleyball, of course. So, congratulations to TCU for being the only undefeated team in NCAA Beach Volleyball. Unless I'm missing someone, but it's quite impressive if you ask me. So, good job to TCU. Sorry. And then, pretty much, I don't think there was anything else that was too big. Florida State took care of business as they took down LSU. It was kind of a rough week for LSU. They lost to UCLA and to Florida State, but they're getting better. UCLA handled business as always, but their schedule is kind of going to pick up. Again, I was surprised LMU lost to South Carolina. I thought they were going to be undefeated up until next week. Like, their schedule is going to pick up, so But we'll see what happens this upcoming week for everything regarding beach volleyball. For TCU, looking at their schedule, they've got Florida International, they've got Cal, and then they've got Grand Canyon, and they've got Texas. So, yeah, they're not going to get too challenged. I mean, they've got Grand Canyon, which is, well, 7th. They've got Cal, which is, well, this is pre this week's rankings, by the way. But if you recall correctly, UCLA just demolished Grand Canyon. And then Cal is ranked 11th, and FIU is ranked 14th. And then Texas, you all think that Texas is the powerhouse in beach volleyball, right? Wrong! Remember, the Texas is the powerhouse in indoor volleyball, not beach volleyball. It's a whole different story in beach volleyball. But for TCU, they should probably roll through this week, unless they get some sort of trouble with, like, Grand Canyon. The following week, TCU has Florida Gulf Coast, Pepperdine, Stetson, and then they've got UTEP, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. They're not going to get another challenge until they play UCLA on Friday the 14th. So, realistically, TCU could go undefeated until they play in the CCSA championships. So, that's something really interesting. We'll see, though. Time will tell. you can't count your chickens before they hatch, but we'll see what happens with TCU women's beach volleyball. I think it'll be quite something if they go undefeated, but time will tell. And then as for USC, Megan Kraft will be back this upcoming week. Like, this was only a one-time thing that she missed, and I'll get into why she missed this week, why she missed last week, and all that sort of thing. It's nothing big. She didn't have anyone die, or she didn't miss anything because of injury. I'll get into that a little bit later. UCLA is still doing big things, even though they lost to USC. And then LMU I think is going to drop, but I don't think they're going to fall out of the top 10. I just was very surprised they lost to South Carolina. But I guess those two CSA teams are just something to keep an eye out for. So don't sleep on those teams. And I don't know, maybe the West Coast Conference stock is going down. So we'll see what happens going forward. Alright, so that's that for the NCAA Beach Volleyball discussion. So now let's jump on into some AVP action, because we had the AVP return for its 40th season this past weekend. So, yes, the AVP returned for its 40th season, and the first tournament began in Miami for the Miami Beach Open. So, we'll start off on the women's side. So, we're just going to fast forward to the Final Four. So the Final Four consisted of Larissa and Lily Maestrini, Julia Scholes and Betsy Flint, Melissa Humana Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson, and Therese Kinnan and Sarah Sponsel. So a funny story about how Melissa Humana Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson got into the bottom half of the bracket. They actually lost to Larissa and Lily Maestrini in the third round of the in match 13 on Saturday, which I was very surprised. So they lost in the quarterfinals, so they got knocked into the consolation bracket, or the contenders bracket, not the consolation bracket, the contenders bracket, and then eventually they had to win their way through it, and then it was quite surprising, but they were able to win their way through, and then they eventually wound up winning their way, and they found their way back into the semifinals. So, in semifinal numero uno, Melissa Humana Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson defeated Therese Kinnan and Sarah Sponsel 21-11 and 21-15. And they advanced to the final where they faced Betsy Flint and Julia Scholes, who defeated the Maestrini girls 21-19 and 21-17, as the final consisted of the top seeded Humana Paredes and Wilkerson taking on the 3 seed Betsy Flint and Julia Scholes. And in the end, the duo from Canada was able to grind out the win 21-16, 24-22. Now, the second set was very tight. So, Humana Paredes and Wilkerson actually had 2 match points. They were up 20-18, and then Scholes and Flint scored, and then they scored again, and it was 20-20, and then 21-21, and then 22-22. But then Melissa Humana Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson eventually scored 2 straight, and then they won the tournament. So it was a tough tournament for Humana Paredes and Wilkerson, but they eventually were able to win the tournament. So it was quite impressive that they were able to win it through the contenders bracket. So good job to the Canadian duo. And it just goes to show you could lose once, but you can't lose twice. Well, you can't really lose twice once you lose in the semifinals. But you know what I mean. It was a tough loss for Betsy Flint and Julia Scholes, but they'll bounce back. Like the next tournament, they should be able to bounce back, just like the Canadian duo Betsy Flint and Julia Skulls actually had to win their way through the contenders bracket, but unfortunately they fell one win short. But they'll be back on the big stage. Julia Skulls actually has a different partner, as last season she was partnered up with Gina Yarongo, but now she is partnered up with Betsy Flint. So good stuff for Julia Skulls, the former USC Trojan. Now on the men's side, I wouldn't say it was kind of expected, but long story short, Team Taylor or Taylor Made or Taylor Sander and Taylor Crabb won the tournament. I'm just going to basically just skip over everything. But it was an eventful tournament, to say the least. The semifinals consisted of Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander taking on Cody Caldwell and Chase Frischman, while the other semifinal consisted of Chase Budinger and Miles Evans taking on Phil Dalhouser and Troy Field. So Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander edged out Cody Caldwell and Chase Frischman in semifinal numero uno, 18-21, 21-18, and 21-19. So that first semifinal was quite dramatic. By the way, I kind of got to brag here for a little bit. I knew Cody Caldwell in high school. I'm sorry, I just got to brag. I saw him play volleyball back in high school. And he also won an NCAA championship back at Loyola of Chicago. Gotta brag for a little bit. I'm sorry. Anyway, so semifinal numero dos consisted of Chase Budinger sweeping Phil Dalhouser and Troy Field, 21-17 and 21-14. I wouldn't say I'm ultimately surprised, but Phil Dalhouser has a new partner in Troy Field just because Casey Patterson did retire. So I guess Phil and Troy have to have this new meshing of partnership and this new cohesion with one another. Excuse me a second. Sorry about that. But Phil Dalhouser and Troy Field are still trying to get everything down pat with one another, while Chase Budinger and Miles Evans, I guess, have everything down pat with one another in terms of their partnership. So, and as for the final, Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander won their final over Budinger and Evans, 21-14 and 21-19. I hate to say this, but Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander winning the final is no surprise, just because those two, well, you remember last year, they won the Phoenix Championships, which was basically like the Super Bowl of the AVP. So, yeah, it's quite impressive that Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander are picking up where they left off. So, it was basically tailor-made for them to win. The tournament was tailor-made for them to win. So, good job to the Taylors on winning the whole thing. So, Team Taylor is at it again. They only lost 2 sets all tournament, which was in the semifinals and the quarterfinals. The quarterfinal, they actually lost to Chase Brewster and Kyle Friend. Is that his name? Yeah, Timothy Brewster and Kyle Friend. And man, that one actually went the distance as well. Set 3 was 23-21. Whew. So, Team Taylor had a little bit of a scare in the quarterfinals and semifinals, but they were able to get her done. So good stuff on that part. So that's that for the AVP. The next tournament will take place in New Orleans in the Bayou. So that's going to take place on April 14th in the New Orleans Open. So it's going to take place at Coconut Beach. So April 14th through the 16th, and nothing has been announced yet. So time will tell on who's going to be partaking, and this is actually going to be a Pro Series tournament. So we'll see what happens in New Orleans. But that's going to do it for the AVP portion of the show. We've got some more beach volleyball to discuss, as the AVP wasn't the only beach volleyball that was happening this past weekend, nor NCAA volleyball. We actually had the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour that was happening in La Paz, as we had some local Americans partaking in that, and the one coming out on top was Team Tiger, as my fellow IE Sports Radio colleague Arthur Parsons calls them, Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss, a.k.a. the former LSU duo, a.k.a. those two, basically won the tournament. So Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss won the La Paz tournament of the Beach Pro Tour. So they kicked off the tournament by beating a pair from Paraguay, 21-16 and 21-10. Then they beat Megan Kraft and Emily Stockman. That is where Megan Kraft was this past weekend. So that is why she wasn't with USC. So that is why Megan Kraft wasn't with USC this past weekend, where she didn't play with USC against TCU and all those other matches. So, yeah. Anyway, Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss beat Megan Kraft and Emily Stockman of the U.S. 22-20, 15-21, and 15-10. Then Kloth and Nuss beat a pair from Lithuania, 21-18, 20-22, and then 15-9. Then in the quarterfinals, Kloth and Nuss defeated a pair from France, 25-27, 21-18, and then 15-9 to advance to the semifinals. Then Kloth and Nuss beat a pair from Brazil, 15-21, 21-18, and then 15-12 to advance to the final, where they took on a pair from the U.S., being Savvy Simo and a former LSU Tiger in Teran Rodriguez. And in the end, Kloth and Nuss won that final, 21-16 and 21-13. So if you're an LSU beach volleyball fan, you had to have been excited to see Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss, as well as Teran Rodriguez, in the final of this tournament. But in the end, Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss took home the gold in the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour in La Paz. So great job to Kloth and Nuss. Mad props to Savvy Simo and Teran Rodriguez for advancing to the final. Quite impressive if you ask me. Sarah Hughes and Kelly Cheng actually finished 5th in this tournament, which is kind of surprising. I did not think they would finish that low. So, even the best fall down. So, all you gotta do is just dust yourself off and try again. I know I'm just referencing many song quotes, but what can you do? But it's quite impressive that Teran, Kloth, and Kristen Nuss continue to take the beach volleyball world by storm, and you really gotta like that they're still very young, and heaven knows that they're still very hopeful in the beach volleyball world, and I'm really excited to see what they could do in the AVP. I really hope they can partake in the Huntington Beach Open or the Laguna Beach Invitational. I really want to meet them and then maybe interview them and whatnot, so cross my fingers. We'll see what happens, though. Alright, but that's that for the La Paz Invitational when it comes to the Beach Pro Tour in the volleyball world, or basically the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour. Either way, that's pretty much that for the Pro Volleyball Tour series and all things beach volleyball. So let's jump on over to some NBA news. Yes, we have some NBA news. That's right, because whether I'm 100% or not, we have some NBA news, because I, Teran Rodriguez, am your one-stop shop for all things NBA news. So we actually got some NBA news this morning, and we actually got some NBA news this past week, and we actually got it leaked last week. So we'll start off with the news that was leaked this morning. So this morning we actually got the news that was leaked to this morning. So we'll start off with the news for this morning, and for the NBA, it's going to have a new location. So it's no longer going to be played at the Pierce Sports Center. So for those that know the NBA, it was going to be played at the Pure Sports. It's always been played at the Pure Sports Center in San Bernardino, California. Sometimes it's been played at New Jersey, but more often than not, it's been played at the Pure Sports Center in San Bernardino, California. It was not really the most adventurous place for me to go to. I remember I had to jump through hoops and bounds to try to go to this place the first go-around when I went to the NBA playoffs last summer. But I eventually went to this place. It was actually quite a nice facility, but it wasn't ultimately worth it. I mean, it was a good facility, but would I do it again? Maybe not. But now there is a new location that the NBA matches are going to be played. And this new location is going to be played at... Can we get a drum roll, please? The new location for all the NBA matches for this season will be played at is Long Beach City College. Y'all thought I was going to say Long Beach State now, didn't you? Ha-ha! But it's going to be played at Long Beach City College. So, that's actually, personally, it's better for me. No, I did not vote on this, so don't even think that I had any influence on this, but I don't know why they voted on this, but I guess it's cool. There are going to be 2 campuses, but it's going to be at the main campus. It's not going to be at the other campus. I guess, I don't know why they'd have it at the other campus, but anyway, anyway, it's going to be at the main campus, which, you know, it's big time right there, and honestly, it's a nice campus, honestly. I really think Long Beach City has a great campus, and I really think that it's a great facility. And excuse me a second. Sorry about that. And honestly, its big gymnasium is quite nice. So it's even got a balcony. So for fans, you could definitely watch that. It's gonna feel like home. It's gonna feel like home away from home. It's going to feel just like a Pure Sports Center. So overall, I think everyone's going to like it, and I think everyone's going to like being at Long Beach City College. I've been to Long Beach City College for volleyball matches, obviously, and I think Long Beach City College is a great gymnasium facility. And for the fans, it's got seats on both sides, so I think if there's going to be like more crowds, so I think it's going to seat more people that actually want to check out the action, and I think it's going to be a whole lot more closer for like local people as well. So I think this is a great facility, and like I said, I didn't have any influence on this, so don't think I picked this location. Otherwise, I would have picked Long Beach State. Just saying, y'all. Anyway, so that's that for the first bit of NBA news. But for the second bit of NBA news, so the NBA championship date has been announced. So the NBA championship date has been announced, and that will be played on July 28th through the 30th. So the quarterfinals will be on the 28th. Semifinals will be on the 29th, and then the third place match and then the first place match will be on the 30th, aka the last day of the season, which will be sad face day for me. But that is basically your championship match. Like I said, the first day of the 2023 NBA season will be on April 7th, which is 18 days from now, as of this recording, so mark your calendars. It's going to be a fun season. There's still lots of news that still needs to be popped and broken out, and still lots of announcements that needs to be made, so be on the lookout for that. That is pretty much all your NBA news from me, Teran Rodriguez, your one-stop shop for all things NBA news. So before we head on out, and before I decide to give my voice a rest for the night, I have to give one more shout out to. I have to give a shout out to the 2023 U.S. Boys U19 national team on winning gold at the Pan American Cup in Guatemala, as they wound up winning the gold medal in the Pan American Cup games as they swept Mexico on Saturday. This was actually a little bit of a 2-week event, and this whole tournament was basically like high school boys, like players that were like in high school and whatnot. So these boys basically won the gold medal, and they won in their age group, and this was the second straight event that these boys won the gold medal, which I thought was darn right impressive. And they only lost one set all tournament long, which I thought was impressive. They went a perfect 5-0, and honestly, it's very impressive. And here's what happened. So, March 13th, they defeated Belize 3-0, 25-11, 25-21, and 25-22. On March 14th, they defeated Mexico in 4 sets, 23-25, 25-19, 25-19, and 25-20. March 15th, they defeated Costa Rica in straight sets, 25-18, 25-20, and 25-17. That was their pool, by the way. After that, they got a first-round bye into the semifinals, where they swept Costa Rica 25-19, 25-19, and 25-15. Then the gold medal match, they swept Mexico 25-23, 25-22, and 25-20. And then all tournament for them was Teran Rosenthal, Kellen Larson, Josh Aruya, and then the MVP of the tournament was Teran Rosenthal, who is actually committed to going to Hawaii, which I think is damn right impressive. Excuse my French, but so good job to Teran Rosenthal. And also Sean Kelly as well. So Sean Kelly, Teran Rosenthal, Kellen Larson, and Josh Aruya were all honored with individual awards. And then Teran Rosenthal was the MVP. So congratulations to the U.S. U19 team on winning back-to-back gold medals, and way to represent the U.S. This is going to be the future of the United States and the U.S. national team. So get used to seeing these boys and get used to seeing all of these names that I just mentioned. So the entire team I guess I'll just read off the entire team. Kellen Larson, Merrick Turner, Victor Loyola, Trent Taliaferro, Isaiah Prufit, Finn Kearney, Sterling Foley, Sean Kelly, Sebastian Sani, Josh Aruya, Teran Rosenthal, Gage Gabriel, and then the alternates, because they deserve some love, Roan Alvayar, Kahale Cleany, Cole Hartkey, Trevel Jordan, Parker Tompkinson, and Peter Zurowiski. And then the head coach was Matt Furbringer, and the assistant coaches Kevin Moore and Danielle Desiderio. And then the performance analyst Nate No, athletic trainer Cheryl Bueno, and then the team leader Coney Liner. Who informed me of this? Shout out to Coney Liner. So congratulations to the U.S. U19 boys national team on winning gold for the second straight Pan Am Cup, and it's my set point salute to you. And on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for me to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully I'll be better by next week. I really hope I am better. Shout out to the chat room that tuned in. Mike, Pat, and David C. Crooks. I appreciate you tuning in. Also shout out to Patty Bex, who is listening I really do appreciate everybody that tuned in. I'll hopefully be back by Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I hope to be 100% better. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great weekend. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really, really do appreciate you. Like I said, I hope to be better by next week. I really can't wait to be better. I might not be at any games this week, just because I might have plans this weekend. We'll see. I might try to get out of them. I might not. But it's still up in the air. But we'll see. Have yourself a great week. Enjoy all the volleyball action. I will see you all Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Until then, enjoy the week. Stay healthy. Don't be like me and don't get sick, because flu season is still out there. But I'll see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Hopefully. Peace!